Hi everyone, I'm Lizberry and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how I made this crochet summer hat. A while back I showed you how to make a cloche hat. You can find the link to that video in the description. I'll use a similar technique to make this hat, but this time I'll make the hat with a flat top and a wider brim. Some things you'll need for this tutorial are a crochet hook, I'm using a size E, a pair of scissors, some stitch markers, I'm using these bobby pins, a yarn needle. If you're making a hat with a wider brim like I am, you could use plastic millinery wire to stiffen the outer edge of the brim. And instead of yarn, I'm going to use this yellow striped baker's twine that I found at Dollar Tree. The yellow stripes help create a straw-like look when crocheted. I'm going to use 2 strands at a time so that my baker's twine is about the thickness of a sport weight yarn. If you want, you could also use a sport weight yarn or a worsted weight yarn, or if you want a more straw hat look, you can use something like jute or hemp twine, or raffia ribbon. If you use the raffia though, you might need to use a bigger hook to be able to work with the ribbon. And if you like, you can use some ribbon and some elastic to make a band and bow to go around the hat, and use a regular needle and thread to sew it all together. You can find a written pattern for this project in my Ravelry store. Find the link in the description below. I'll begin the project by making a double magic circle with 8 stitches of double crochet. Once again, I'm using 2 strands at the same time. For the rest of the project, I'm going to work all the stitches around the front post of the stitch instead of the top of the stitch like normal. So I'll work each stitch here around the front post of the stitch. Working on the posts helps create a more structured stitch so that the hat will hold its shape better. In this next row, I'm also going to begin to increase to widen the top of the hat. I'm going to increase each row 8 times, and I'll go on increasing 8 per row for 9 rows. In row 1, since there are 8 stitches, I'll increase every stitch of the row. So since I'm making double crochets, I'll yarn over and pull up a loop around the front post of the first stitch of my magic circle. Then double crochet. And mark that stitch with my bobby pin. Then double crochet again around the same post to increase the first stitch. Then I'll repeat the same thing for the next stitch. Yarn over, pull up a loop around the post of the next stitch, and double crochet. Then double crochet again around the same post to increase that stitch. And I'll continue to repeat the same thing around the entire row, increasing around the post of each stitch. At the end of the row, I should have 16 stitches total in the row. In the next row, I'll continue to increase 8 times per row. This time, since I have a total of 16 stitches, I'll increase every second stitch. So I'll double crochet around the post of the first stitch of the row, mark the first stitch with my bobby pin, then increase the second stitch by double crocheting twice onto the same post. Repeat that again, double crochet 1 onto the post of the next stitch, then increase the second stitch by double crocheting twice onto the same post. And continue that pattern across the whole row. Double crochet 1, Then increase the next stitch with 2 double crochets worked onto the same post. And repeat that until the end of the row. At the end of this row, I have 24 stitches total. In this next row, I'll increase 8 times every 3rd stitch this time, since there are 24 stitches in the row, in the same way that I did in the previous row. Double crochet onto the first 2 stitches, then increase the 3rd by double crocheting twice onto the same post. And repeat across the whole row, with 32 stitches total in the row at the end. In the next row, I'll increase every 4th stitch, then every 5th stitch in the row after that, and so on, until the top of the hat reaches the right width. I went on until I was increasing every 9th stitch, and I had a total of 80 stitches in the row. Now I've gotten to the end of 9 rows of increase. Next, I need to add rows without increasing to lengthen the top of the hat. If you want to, you can continue to work on the front loops just like before to make a more rounded top for the hat. I want my hat to have a more flat shape at the top, so I worked the first row of double crochet without increase into the back posts of the stitches instead of onto the front posts to create a sort of ridge at the top of the hat. To work onto the back posts, I'll pull up a loop here on the back side around the post of the stitch. So yarn over, pull up a loop around the post from behind, then double crochet around the post. Then into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop around the post from the back, and double crochet. And repeat that all around the row. Okay, now I've finished with 1 row of double crochet without increases into the back posts of the stitch. Now I'll work into the front posts again for the rest of the project. So just like before, yarn over and pull up a loop around the post from the front this time, and double crochet. Then continue to work rows of front post double crochet for 7 rows. Now I've gotten to the end of my rows of double crochet without increases. Next, I'll create the brim of the hat. To do this, I'll simply continue to increase 8 times per row for 10 rows, starting from where I left off when I was increasing at the top. Since I last increased every 9th stitch, in this next row I'll increase every 10th stitch. Then I'll continue to increase by the next number until the brim is wide enough. In this row I'll increase every 10th stitch with 88 stitches in the row. In the next row I'll increase every 11th stitch, then every 12th stitch in the next row, every 13th stitch in the row after that, and so on all the way until I've increased every 19th stitch of the row. In the end, I should have 160 stitches total in the row. Once I finish that last row of increase, I'll work one last row of increase, this time using single crochets, working around the millinery wire to stiffen the outer edge of the brim. In this row, I increased every 20th stitch. To do this, I'll line one end of the millinery wire up with my stitches, leaving a few inches sticking out at one end. Then I'll work the whole row over the millinery wire until I get a few inches from the end of the row, working the last few inches of stitches around both sides of the millinery wire until I get to the end of the row to hide the wire inside the brim. At the end, it was a little tricky to get the yarn around the wire, so I just pulled a loop around the wire first, then pulled that loop around the post of the stitch and finished the stitch. Next, slip stitch to the first stitch of the row to end the work. Cut off the end and sew it in. If you like, you could end the work here, or you could add a ribbon to the base of your hat. I sewed a long strand of ribbon and a small piece of elastic into a ring that fit around the hat while I had the hat on. It's important to make sure the ribbon is big enough when the hat is on, because the crocheted hat will have a tendency to stretch, and you don't want the ribbon to be too small. Once the band for the hat is made, once again you could leave it like this if you want, but I'm going to make a little bow to put on the ribbon. I assembled the bow just to give you an idea of what it looks like before I begin. So I have 5 pieces of ribbon here, 2 large lengths that are sewn together into a ring, and 1 smaller length also in a ring. I have 2 other smaller lengths that are the same length but not sewn into a ring. First, I'll take the 2 larger rings and overlap them in a cross shape. Then I'll take the smaller ring and lay it horizontally across the middle of the 2 crossed larger rings. Next, I'll take one of the unsewn ribbons that I have left and fold it down each side in an upside down V shape and pin it to the back of my crossed ribbons, making sure the shiny side of the ribbon is facing forward. Finally, I'll wrap the last remaining ribbon around the middle of my bow and sew all the pieces together. I want to make sure to leave the excess ribbon so that I can fasten the bow onto the hat band. If you want, you could sew the ribbon permanently to the band, Or you could just fold the excess ribbon around the band and pin it in place so that it can be changed out whenever you like. And now my summer hat is finished. I decided to add a bunch of crocheted flowers that I had lying around for the final shots of this video. I paired it with this russet dress and my cactus pinafore, which I had made a while back. How would you style this summer hat? Let me know in the comments. As always, if you made a project using this or any of my designs, I'd love to see it. You can find my social media links in the description below, or tag me on Instagram at LizFairy. If you liked this video, you could press the like button and share it on social media, and if you'd really like to help out the channel, you can donate to my Patreon. You can get some cool perks from Patreon, like seeing my videos early and ad-free. You can find out more about that at patreon.com/fairyrings. What are some other hat ideas you think I should try? Leave your suggestions in the comments, and make sure you subscribe to the channel and ring the bell to get notifications every time I post. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!